Started? Good morning, everyone. Okay, aside for not to be intimidated by the Marma premise, it's going to run through pretty quick. We're going to discuss one question today that applies to Shabbos. This year in Yeshiva we're teaching Masechta Shabbos. It applies to Shmita, this upcoming year is Shmita. It applies to Rosh Hashanah, and it has to do with the general perspective of Yidden and Kima Mitzvah also. The main question, before getting into the details of Hilchos Shabbos, is Hashem gave Jews Shabbos to keep Shabbos. But we have to rest. We can't do malacha, we have a mitzvah to rest. Who exactly does Hashem want to rest? Does Hashem want the Jewish people to rest and to not do the 39 malachas? Or has Hashem put the world into a state of rest? And therefore, when I am interacting with the world, when I'm doing a productive malacha in the world, I'm breaking the rest of the world. I'm interrupting, so to say, the sleep, the rest that the world's been placed in. And that's the Isra of malacha. Right? It sounds similar to the classic explanation if it's a Chavas Gavra or Chavas Chavtza. And there's different nafkaminas, as we'll soon see.
When the Yad Yisrael was Takito, was it a mitzvah applied to the Jews to force non-Jews to keep Shabbos?
Very good. That's going to come. We're going to get there at the end. For now, we'll start off with the Chasam Sofer, just to see one perspective on it. Chasam Sofer, the first Maramakim, the paragraph that starts is talking about a certain halacha in Amir al-Nachri when you tell a non-Jew to do malacha for you. The details of the halacha over there aren't really important, but he says that he brings a Pnei Yeshua. The Pnei Yeshua says that seemingly you can't do this Amir al-Nachri because of shlichus. There's a concept, yesh shlichus l'nachri l'hachmer, to tell a non-Jew to do an aver for you is not halachically acceptable. But he doesn't agree with that, the Chasam Sofer. He says why. Listen, read the lashon in the middle of the paragraph. There's a rule. Which halachas, which mitzvahs can you send a shliach to do for you? Which mitzvahs can you send a shliach to do for you? You could send a shliach to marry a woman for you. You could send a shliach to pay back a loan for you. But can I send? Where do you draw the line? We know you can't send a shliach to put on tefillin for me, right? Can I say go put on tefillin and have me in mind? Go wash your hands for Hamaitzi and have me in mind. Which mitzvahs can you send a shliach for? Which mitzvahs can't you send a shliach for? So the classic explanation is, what's the point of the mitzvah? If the point of a mitzvah is I need to accomplish a certain result, then I could send a shliach to accomplish that result for me. But if the mitzvah is that I have something that my body needs to do, a mitzvah that's mutal on me and my body to do, then I can't send a shliach to do it. The mitzvah is on my body. The mitzvah not is that something needs to be accomplished. So says the Chasam Sofer, don't tell me that you can't, that there's a concept of sending a guy as a shliach for you on Shabbos. Shabbos is not shaykh to be over through a shliach, because Shabbos is a mitzvah on the guf every ha'adam, on the person, that the person has to keep Shabbos. The limbs of the person need to be in a state of rest. So we see pretty clearly the opinion of the Chasam Sofer. He said you can't, sending a non-Jew to do a malacha for you is not shlichus. Shlichus is impossible by a Jew, on Shabbos, as the mitzvah of Shabbos is on the body of a person. Okay, that's one side of the spectrum. Let's contrast that to the Alter Rebbe right away in Siman Reish Mem Gimel, who says, "Asur chachamim leimer lanachri lasis lana malacha b'Shabbos." It's asur to send a guy to do a malacha for you b'Shabbos. Reading 3 lines in, Kshehanachri Eisa b'Shabbos, when a non-Jew does a malacha for you on Shabbos, who Eisa b'Shlichus Yisrael. Why, when I send a non-Jew to do a malacha for me, is it asur? Not because of side reasons, not because of my amir I'm telling him, but because the guy is my shliach. The Chasam Sofer just told us before that it's impossible to send a shliach on Shabbos, but the Alter Rebbe says very clearly that when you send a guy to do a malacha for you, it's asur because the guy is your shliach. Obviously, there's a fundamental machlekes over here. Is it possible to have a shliach on Shabbos or not? It depends. Who needs to rest? If I need to rest, then I can't send. Then my sending a shliach isn't a problem. I'm still resting. Hashem told me not to do malacha. My body needs to be in a state of rest. So even if I send a shliach, that's not a problem on me. But if the problem is I shouldn't manipulate and get in the way of the world's in a state of rest, and my doing malacha can't interrupt the world's state of rest, then it is possible for me to send a shliach and to be mechalel Shabbos through a shliach, because I, through sending someone else, manipulated the world from being in a state of rest. Bring it. What?
Like one of the basics. Your animals have to rest.
Only yours.
What's the question, Mark?
Your animals have to rest. Your family has to rest.
Okay, and that's seemingly another sniff. But Schneier asked a very good question before. Why is this only by a Jew but not by a non-Jew? If the part is that we need to rest as Jewish people, then it makes sense. We have the mitzvah, not non-Jews. But if the mitzvah is the world needs to be in a state of rest,
it's even more than that. There's a halacha in something that was created in Yom Tov. You're not allowed to use it something.
Yeah.
So if that was the case, we would have a people have a problem going to the store. Once a Shabbos buy something, it's created.
Exactly, but it boils down to the same nekuta. What about a guy's malacha? So b'pashtus we can answer. We're going to get to more of a famous in at the end. B'pashtus we can answer just like Hashem doesn't like shatnez. Hashem doesn't like kilayim. Certain things in the world, the result Hashem doesn't like. But the only one that he's mitzvah these things to is the Jews. Right? The mitzvah of basa v'chalav kilayim is manipulating creation. Right? But at the end of the day, still, non-Jews don't have that mitzvah because the only people that Hashem is makbid on these big changes are the Jews. But the essence of the mitzvah over there is still in the world, not on me. Hashem doesn't care about my action of putting in together two fruits. He cares about that you're trying to create a new creation. It's a world problem, not a person problem. Shabbos, we seem to have two directions over here. We have the Chassam Sofer who says that Shabbos is a person mitzvah. The rest is a state of being that the person needs to be in. And the Alter Rebbe says that it's a state of being the world needs to be in. What we're going to do now is bring a couple rayas to the lashon of the Alter Rebbe and to show the side that Shabbos is more than just a state of rest the person needs to be in, but it's a state of rest that the world actively is in. Before we go further, the question?
I was going to say, if you say that all that matters is that whether the deed gets done or not, then it should never be allowed, even with the shliach. If the deed is getting done, then it shouldn't get done. On the other hand, if it's the body, then it should be that it is allowed. But your body,
no. So shlichus over here means is it a problem? Can I do an avera through a shliach on Shabbos? So that depends. The Chassam Sofer says even if you send a shliach, it's not your avera. What? But for a nachri lechumra there is.
the thing is that it shouldn't get done.
That's so the Alter Rebbe who says that it's possible to do an avera through the shliach means the point is that it shouldn't get done. According to the Chassam Sofer, he says even if you send a shliach, it's not your problem. You're still resting. Obviously, holds that it's a state of rest on the person. Where are the rayas? So let's go through a couple sources. I only chose 2 or 3, and then we'll come for a full circle. You see the page that starts with Gemara Shabbos, Daf Gimel. Over there, it's talking about 2 people doing haitzah, 2 people carrying together. In other words, carrying for a real halachic carrying. There has to be a akira and a hanacha. There has to be uprooting an object from its original place, going from a rishus hayachid to a rishus harabim, let's say, and then putting it down over there. If one person does that, he has been mechal Shabbos, he has isser skila, isser kares, etc. Let's say 2 people do this. Let's say I take this from my rishus hayachid, I hand it to David Leib, he puts it down. A malacha happened, but we each did a part of it. Okay? No one person did the whole malacha. So what's the halacha over there? Obviously, seemingly, be putter. No one did it. Just like you only get malchus if you eat a cheeseburger, a full kazayas. If I eat half a kazayas and you eat half a kazayas, we don't get malchus. So to over here, if I start the haitzah and you finish the haitzah, obviously there's no malchus, seemingly. But if you look, 5 lines up from the bottom, you see over there, it says over there, Shneihen Turim. When one person does a malacha and the other person finishes the malacha, it says that they're both patur. The Gemara is bothered by that. It says, why are they both patur from bringing a chatas? A malacha happened between them. So we answer because there's a pasuk that's machadish, the am haaretz ba'asaisa, that only ha'isas kula gets punished, not ha'isas mitzasa. Okay, so in other words, the Gemara is bothered conceptually that when 2 people do a malacha together, even though no one person did it, there should still be a isser chatas, either both of them together, or maybe the last one should get it, because the malacha happened. Seemingly, what's the Gemara's logic? The Gemara's not bothered about this by any other mitzvah. If I do half an avera and you do half an avera, you can't punish me, you can't punish him. No one did the ma'aseh avera. It seems pretty clear from the Gemara's train of thought that over here the malacha is beyond just what I do. Malacha is, did you manipulate the state of the world? The state of the world is in a state of rest. Even if no one person did that, but if between two people, at the end of the day, the world's rest was interrupted. So there is room to assume that we should give a chiyuv chatas, even though relative to the person, no one person was over his own isur malacha. Each person, technically, according to the shiurim of Torah, is still resting. But it seems from this Gemara that the point of resting is not just a state of being in the person, state of being in the world, and even though this malacha happened between two people, the world's state of being was manipulated. Another thing, I forgot to print it on the source sheet, but very geschmack.
No, it's not a real argument.
What?
But you can also say that the fact that the Gemara is shining, having this shine, it's because it's not on the chetz. It's the fact that something better. But to mechayev somebody, you can mechayev because it's not done by one person.
Hey, but over here we need a pasuk to be mechaded. The Gemara should have answered back. Why should you? Everywhere in Torah, it's only when you do the shir. The fact that the Gemara doesn't even knock that off. It says you're right. There is room logically to say.
It's not because you would think to mechayev that, meaning that it shows you the essence.
So it's a machlekes. It's a machlekes of the mafarshim. It's got to be both or one. It is because you only have this by Shabbos. You don't have it by any other mitzvah. Why by Basa V'Chalav did the Gemara say not be mechayev, not be mechayev? It's Isur Achila. Over here, at the end of the day, because the point is that the world's state of being was manipulated, that's why there's room to Bechal start the conversation. The Gemara in Daf Ayin Gimel Klal Gadol is where it talks about the 39 malachas. It starts labeling, these are the 39 malachas. What is the malachas? It says Hacheresh, Hazereya, Ha'ofer, a baker, a planter, right? These are the malachas. It goes through the 39 malachas. The Rambam obviously also goes through the 39 malachas at the codifier of the Gemara who brings the halacha. But over there, the Rambam's lashon, he changes the lashon HaMishnah. Instead of saying Hacheresh, Hazereya, Ha'teichen, Ha'ofer, he says Hazriya, Hacharisha, Haktsira, Ha'afiya. What's the difference? It sounds like just a nuance in lashon. One says Hacheresh, which means one who bakes, one who plants, the actor. And one says Hacharisha, the planting, Hazriya. And so obviously this aligns very much with the question that we're asking. When you say melacha, when you say any isser, the Rogatchover goes into that. There's three places you could label a mitzvah. There's on the actor, there's on the act, or there's on the result. And over here also, this has been our question that we started from the beginning. This isser melacha, is it a problem on the actor that my body needs to be in a state of rest? And the moment I act in the malacha, independent of the result that happens, I was already Machal Shabbos? Or no, the Chilul Shabbos, where do we put the pin on what Chilul Shabbos is on the result of what happens in the world. And we see from the Rambam, who very clearly deviates from the Lashon HaMishnah. And says, doesn't count the same order of the Mishnah. But instead of Hacheresh, Hazereya, Ha'ofer, Ha'teichen, etc., he says Hacharisha, Hazriya. Clearly is there to highlight that the Yisoid Isser HaMalacha is not the action, but the result, what actually happens in the world. The nifal, not the pa'ula, but the nifal. Let's bring one more place and then we'll tie it all together. What about Tosefes Shabbos? What about when I start Shabbos early? Okay, so there's regular Shabbos, we seem to be leaning in the direction, the Alter Rebbe clearly seems to be leaning in the direction that Shabbos is not just a state of being of my body, Shabbos is a state of being of the world around me. And my being Mechal Shabbos isn't just a Chilul Shabbos on my body, it's a Chilul Shabbos, it's a Chilul on the world state of being. What about if I'm Mekabel Shabbos a couple hours early?
Just that, and the
Rambam also seems to be fitting with the Rambam, exactly. What about when I'm Mekabel Shabbos early? Is there room to also say that it's a state of being in the world and now for me and my interaction with the world? Or is that purely on me? Any suggestions? You guys are quite proud.
For the best, if you say that it's based on the world, it's not Shabbos.
Is it possible?
It's not Shabbos.
Okay.
That's for you.
So let's start backwards though. If there is such a concept of Tosefes Shabbos, such a concept of taking in Shabbos early. When one does take in Shabbos early, is that have a different type of malacha status that it's only on the person? Or is the person and his chelkei ba'olam now also in a state of...
The person next to him is not.
Okay. Yochid has the ability to accept Shabbos.
We're not saying.
No, if you Makabel Shabbos for yourself, even if the Klal hasn't been Makabel for you, it's Shabbos.
You cannot be on the.
So for me and my Chelka Ba'olam, do I view it similarly that I'm saying in my Chelka Ba'olam now is at rest? Or is it also, is this one purely on the person?
It has to be on the Chefze only. It's not shaykh if it's not on the Chefze.
Why? Like some people said, every Ha'adam needs to be in a state of rest. The person and his limbs, his body needs to be resting. Generally, Shabbos, we don't say that. But to Tosefes Shabbos, we say that enough.
No, but that's what I'm saying. The Tosefes Shabbos has to be only on the Chefze.
Only on the Chefza, meaning on the world. It's not only on the person.
Not on the world.
On the person. Okay, on the God. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So we have a raya for this.
Would the same thing would apply also to time zones nowadays? If you're in one time zone, your shliach's in another time zone.
So that, okay, possibly. That's complicated. That's a lot more
It's not working because I try to sell chometz, by the way, with Rabbi Kamason.
Oh yeah, and you're in Israel.
In California.
Usually they're more makro, actually. So I thought they were more makro.
It's not.
What was our first raya from the Alter Rebbe that Shabbos is an Isser Chefza or an Isser in the world, is a state of rest for the world, not a state of rest on the person? Our raya was the fact that he holds it's possible to send the shliach to do a malacha for you and you are over. What happens by Tosefes Shabbos? Look at this halacha chafei. Misha kadam lespal arba shel Shabbos. Someone who davens Mariv early and kfar chal alav kabbalah Shabbos. Over there, he could send a Jew to do a malacha for him. Seemingly, if we said that it's a state of being in the world, and when I send the shliach to do a malacha for me, that's my chilul Shabbos.
And after that, you send someone.
But why, when I'm a Kabbalah Shabbos early, I could send not only an non-Jew, I could send a Jew to do a malacha for me. Obviously, it is not a state of being then in the world. Only Tosefes Shabbos, regular Shabbos, is a state of being in the world around me. But Tosefes Shabbos is what I'm a Kabbalah on myself to be in a state of rest as a hachana for the state of rest of the world.
By the way, why he says that he's allowed this? If he become on himself without
Good question. I'm not. Yeah, there will be other ways. So? Do we have a right? What's the logic for this? Okay, we seemingly have a pretty clear chiluk in the Alter Rebbe. That Shabbos, real time zone of Shabbos, is a state of being of the world. But when I'm a Kabbalah Shabbos early, it's a state of being in me. What's the logic behind that? So obviously, let's go back to the initial Shabbos, to the way Hashem introduced Shabbos to the world. And over there we have two rayas also that prove that Hashem was injecting Menucha into the world, not just giving it as a tzivah to the person to remember Him. The famous Rashi on Parashat Bereshis, Hashem rest stopped on the seventh day. What does it mean that Hashem stopped working on the seventh day? He stopped working at the end of the sixth day, right? So you have a couple of biurim in Rashi. There's a sikha about this in Chelek. Look at the last two lines. Davar acher. Hashem was creating the world. The world was still missing something. What was the world missing? The world was missing Menucha. Bas Shabbos, Bas Menucha. So what's the Teichen of Shabbos? Teichen of Shabbos is not just a mitzvah for us to commemorate our Creator. Shabbos was Hashem's last rest, was Hashem's last creation in the world. The world was gifted rest, and that's what, so to commemorate the rest that Hashem injected, so to say, into the world on Shabbos, that's why when we keep Shabbos, it's also the world goes back every 7 days to that state of rest that Hashem placed in the world, not placed in me. When I'm a Kabbalah Shabbos early, I'm not in the time zone yet when Hashem placed the world in a state of rest. The world could have malacha happen to it now, right? There's no problem with the world having malacha happen to it now. The world is only in rest zone from the time that Hashem placed it in. If I'm a Kabbalah Shabbos on me early, it must only be on me. The world's not in that state of mind yet. That the world's not in the menucha zone that Hashem gave it from Shkia to Tzeis of the Shabbos time. An interesting another raya, Yakut Shemaini. It's nice to go together. It's an Indian Gula Mashiach about Nekeva to Seviv Gever. It says now the man is dominant over the woman. When Mashiach comes, the woman will be more dominant over the man.
What's the connection to this?
Let's see. It comes up somewhere in the middle.
I mean, this one's for you.
Ba'elam hazeh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu machazer al Yisrael sheyaser etzayne b'yaksu b'tshuva. In this world, and I think it's pretty pertinent to this time, everyone can find its relevance. Hashem goes around to the Jews and gives them giloyim in order for us to do His will. It's the man being dominant. But la'asid lavai, or I think we're pretty in this time already. Yisrael machazer al HaKadosh Baruch Hu sheyaser etzayne. We're turning to the Eibusher and saying we want to do your will better. It's not that Hashem. Instead of him being the dominant force to keep this relationship, we're becoming the dominant force to keep the relationship. In this world, someone picks figs on Shabbos. The fig doesn't tell him anything. But when Mashiach comes, the fig will complain to him and say, Shabbos he. So again, if Shabbos is a state of being on the person, it might not come into the fig. You could be I can say that the fig's like trying to keep people from. But it also fits very well with this Yalkut Shemaini that Shabbos is not a state of being on the person, Shabbos is a state of being on the fig. The fig state of rest that Hashem placed it in shouldn't be interrupted. This is to finish off the topic and to connect it to Shmita.
That's beautiful, right?
Huh? Yeah, very clear. Doesn't get clearer than that.
But that shows you that it's on the
Shabbos and Shmita are labeled entirely the same way. Shvisa, to be a state of rest. One is weekly, one is yearly, or every 7 years, one is every 7 days. How does Torah frame? Over here you have a sicha, if it's a chayvas adam. The world needs to be in a state of rest. I'm saying we don't work the ground on Shmita. Why? Again, is that my Yisra Malacha, or is that the world needs to be in a state of rest for the year? Over there, the Rebbe says, though, you have a pasuk very clear that seems to tell us what it is. Look at the last source page. When you come to the land that I'm going to give you. The land that needs to rest. Right? Okay? At least by Shmita, the case is rested. You have two other psukim after that. Shabbos, Shabbos, and Yeh La'aretz. Shabbos, Shabbos, and Yeh La'aretz.
But you see, he said the Shav Sovet, it's clear. But the loss from Shabbos Hashem. So he relates.
Maybe also on the person. But no one's arguing that it's on the person. The shaila is, how far does it go? Is it also on the land?
From the notion, you can say the Shabbos action is on the Chetzer too.
On the person.
From the person of Shemitah.
Two, yeah, of course. But I think that's the Hanach of Pshuta. That's what we all had going into this today. We all know that we.
Today it's on the tablet. It's Shabbos.
On the person.
Yes.
It's all on the person. The question is, does everything, before we started the shoot today, we all assumed, I can do something. But now, at least, yeah, you're right, it's also on the person. But it's also very clear, it extends past just a state of rest of the person.
The otherwise say, because you see Shmita,
yeah,
that it's on the Chetzer, not on the tablet.
And we say
And
put it
the
together with
Lashon is
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Hekesh. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So now, Adkan, the Nigla, the halachic perspective, it's a good perspective for us to note when we go into the world on Shabbos, that it's a state of rest, and when we go into this world, when we go into this upcoming year, it's a different year. It's not only I have different mitzvahs. I'm entering into Shnas HaShmita, right? It means that Bagashmi, the DNA of the world, the energy running through the world is different. Not just the mitzvahs given to the Jew is different. But let's go back to Schneer's question he asked in the beginning. If Shabbos or if Shmita is a state of rest of the world, then seemingly everyone should be part of that. Not only my animals, all goyim. It still sits funny that only Jews have the tzibur of Shabbos and not goyim also. But al pi Chassidus, it becomes very clear, and it fits very well. Hashem created a world. Has there ever been a new invention in the world since Sheshes Immigration? No. There's been superficial manipulation of everything that already exists and putting things together. It's impossible to make a real change in the world. It's impossible to make even yesh meyesh. You can only manipulate things superficially. You can't make a real change to the world. When did that change, and what's the one exception? Matan Torah. Very good. Matan Torah means you didn't have the capability to make an actual new invention that never existed. You could take Olam Hazeh and actually change its DNA. Not just change its coding or what it's looking like and manipulate chafetzim that exist. What it is can be changed min hakatza l'katza. When a Yid uses the Kayach of Torah, that is the Kayach of Torah given to us on Matan Torah, and that is our eventual duty of changing the world with Mashiach. So, when a guy, the world is in a state of rest on Shabbos. Okay, then the Eibishter gave the world the state of menucha. Hashem says, don't manipulate this menucha. How far could a guy manipulate that menucha already? Can a guy change the real soul of what's going on in the world right now? The world is at a state of rest. It's like taking someone who's sleeping and like shaking him a little bit. He's still sleeping. A guy can't change the world to the core. So even when a guy's cooking, okay, so the world's state of rest deeply hasn't been manipulated. Superficial things are being moved around.
Naturally, bad.
It's the only, exactly, no shine in the etzem of what's going on. Uh-oh.
Oh, it's funny the other side. Sorry.
Why is there still not a theme on the place of rest?
Huh?
Why is there still not a
Has to be anchored, no?
Because the Chiv Hashem's world needs to be in a state of rest. Even if a guy works, it's not manipulating the state of rest of the world.
You're saying that
Yeah. Seemingly, we could say. Just to finish off.
Okay, so 1 second.
Huh?
So that's why only the Jews are.
That's why only the Jews exactly are commanded on Shabbos. That's why they're only commanded on Shmita. Because they're the only people that can actually have an effect on the world.
Because through Torah and mitzvahs.
In other words, and this is important thing to remember by any mitzvah we do. That's why I said we should expand this past Shabbos, past Shmita. Whatever a Jew does when he does one mitzvah is accomplishing more of a chiddush than when someone invents a quantum physics mechanics.
What?
A machine based on quantum mechanics. Someone invents the iPhone. That's not an invention. That's taking koiches that already exist and knowing how to rewire them. But nothing's new been brought into the world that hasn't been here before. When a Jew does one mitzvah, he's making a more novel chiddush to Eilam Haza. He's the only one that can make a chiddush to the core in Eilam Haza. Can't be done before. Obviously, this applies to Rosh Hashanah. It's not just we're blowing shofar for ourselves. It's where we're bringing Malchus to the world. We're bringing Hashem's presence as king to this world, and therefore changing the state of world from just being a dead world to a state of servitude to Hashem, connection to Hashem, etc. And it's a mode, it's a mindset that we should all have before when we're doing anything in Torah mitzvahs. Notice the impact we have. It's not just impact and ripple effect of how we're changing people. It's the only thing that's possible to have real impact in Olam Haza, and we should have our ultimate. We are all contractors. Eibishter, Eliyahu, the Eibishter put us all here as contractors to build a dira for him. And because we're the only people that could do that, by mitzvah aseh, by mitzvah say, and we should ultimately accomplish the dira. Put the sealant, the finishing coat on the paint. We did it, and bring Mashiach.
This is how you give a shiur. First you give the more, you give the gashlius, and then you put